फ्रेंड्स, आपने बिजनेस तो शुरू कर दिया. यू स्टार्टेड सेलिंग योर प्रोडक्ट्स, यू स्टार्टेड रिक्रूटिंग पीपल एंड इनकरिंग वेरियस कॉस्ट. अभी आपका टारगेट यही है कि हाउ डू आई इंक्रीज माई सेल and reduce my expenses so that I can make maximum profit. But do you know that one of the top 3 biggest costs in your profit and loss account is your tax liability, the income tax outflow. And how much do you know about it? अभी आप कहेंगे कि मेरे चाचा का लड़का है या मेरा फ्रेंड है जो सीए है और मेरा सारा टैक्सेशन मैनेज कर लेता है. I understand that. But what if he takes a look at your books after the year end is over? He will only be left to do some postmortem. It is you who are regularly involved in your day-to-day operations, and therefore it is you who have to understand, take charge of this top expense on your profit and loss account. Now we are not talking of any tax evasion or tax avoidance. We are talking of optimizing your tax liability, and you can't optimize something which you don't know. So friends, इस वीडियो में I am going to share about 3 basic but key principles on taxation which will help you optimize your tax liability. So end तक बने रहिए and I am sure you are going to get some key insights on taxation. So let's simplistically assume that your sale is 1 lakh, your expenses are 80,000 and your profit as per profit and loss account is 20,000. Now, the first of the key principle is there are 2 kinds of expenses. एक है operating expense और दूसरा है capital cost. Operating expenses are the ones which you incur regularly for the functioning of your business. The benefit of these expenses exhaust in a very short period of time. The benefit accrues in a limited period. For example, कौन से टाइप के ये expenses है? आपने अपने एम्प्लॉइज को सैलरी दिया, आपने रेंटल पेमेंट किया, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी पेमेंट, मोबाइल इंटरनेट एक्सपेंसेस. दीज आर द एक्सपेंसेस विच यू यूजुअली इनकर मंथ आफ्टर मंथ रेगुलरली. दीज आर कॉल्ड ऑपरेटिंग एक्सपेंसेस एंड दीज आर पार्ट ऑफ योर 80,000 expenses, legitimate part of 80,000 expenses. There are other kind of expenses or what we call outflow is called capital cost. These are usually one-time cost, and the benefit of this cost accrues to you over a long period of time. For example, आपने कार परचेस कर ली, तो कार की बेनिफिट आपको 1 साल में एग्जॉस्ट नहीं होने वाली है. You will use this car for let's say 5, 7, 10 years. So if you purchase this car for 10 lakhs, this 10 lakhs will not be regarded as your expense. A small portion of it, let's say 10%, will go to your profit and loss account, and the remaining 90% will remain as asset. So if you purchase a computer or plant and machinery, or you put money for furniture, all these are the one-time cost whereby the money goes out of your bank account, but they are not part of your expenses, that 80,000 expenses. Just a small portion of that total value of the asset, जिसे हम कहते हैं depreciation, that goes to become the part of your expenses year after year till the value of that asset becomes almost zero. So it's important for us to understand मेरा operating cost क्या है और मेरा capital cost क्या है और उसका इम्पैक्ट मेरे प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट में कैसे होने वाला है. क्लाइंट्स मुझे पूछते थे कि सर मेरा प्रॉफिट तो 10 लाख रुपया का है लेकिन बैंक में तो बैलेंस नहीं है. तो मुझे समझाना पड़ता है कि यू हैव यूज्ड द बैंक बैलेंस टू बाय योर कार, बट द एंटायर वैल्यू ऑफ द कार हैज नॉट गॉन टू द एक्सपेंस. Just a small portion has gone to the expense, the remaining is lying in the asset. So for you, important to understand, there are 2 kinds of expenses. एक है operating cost, which becomes part of your 80,000, and second is your capital cost, which does not form part of that 80,000 expense. Just a small portion of that value form part of the 80,000 expense. Second basic and fundamental principle is understanding the difference between business expense and personal expense. What should form part of that 80,000 is only business expense. If any personal expenditure is included in the 80,000 expense, that will be removed. That will not be regarded as your legitimate business expense, and you will have to pay tax on that amount as well. For example, in the 80,000, suppose 5,000 is your personal expenses included there. Then if your officer will figure out this 5,000 rupees, then he will say that this 5,000 will not be regarded as your business expense, and therefore you will have to pay tax on not 20,000 but 25,000. Now, so there are expenses which are like you buy sunglasses or you do some personal shopping, shirts, trousers. This cannot be form part of your business expense. Now there are expenses जैसे आप रेस्टोरेंट में चले गए डिनर के लिए, अगर आप फैमिली के साथ गए हैं तो पर्सनल एक्सपेंस है, और आप कस्टमर्स के साथ गए हैं तो बिजनेस एक्सपेंस है. बट इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू डिस्टिंग्विश whether it is a business expense or personal expense. Now there are expenses जिसमें let's say you go to Singapore with your family, then it becomes your personal expense. But अगर सिंगापुर में कोई कॉन्फ्रेंस है and you participated in a conference, you visited certain prospective clients, then this will be regarded as your business income. But it is important for you to have a proper supportings, proper documentation to prove, to justify that these were business expenses. Otherwise, these expenses will not be allowed by your tax officer as part of your business expense, and you will be asked to pay tax on that. So be mindful, understand that whenever you are claiming an expenditure in your profit and loss account, you should be able to justify that these are legitimate business expenses. Now, third key, basic and fundamental principle is that the expenses must be related to the current financial year. Now you may or may not have paid that expense. It might not have gone out of your bank account, but if it is incurred in the current financial year, you are supposed to account that expense in the current financial year. Any expense which is related to previous year, the earlier year, or of the future period will not be allowed as an expenses of the current year. So you have to make sure that at the year end, make sure that all the expenses you have incurred in the current year, you may have paid in the next few months, but that needs to be accounted as expense of the current year. If you do not account this in this year, then in the next year when you try to account, the chartered accountant or the tax officer will say that this is not related to that year, it is related to the earlier year, and therefore you will neither get a deduction in the current year nor in the next year. Thereby you are likely to lose out on tax amount on that expenses. So you have to ensure that all the expenses which are related to the current year are duly accounted in your books in the current year. So friends, when you get a fairly good understanding of these three basic but fundamental principles, that is understanding the difference between operating and capital expenses, understanding the difference between business expense and personal expense, and accounting for all the expenses that are related to the current year, you will be able to have a better grip on how does the taxation impact on your profit and loss account, and you will be able to optimize your tax liability. If you need any clarification, please put down in the comment box and I'll be happy to revert back to you. If you found this information useful and informative, do like this video, share with your friends and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you.